What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G. Matthews, break down all the original content you watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the June 24th, 2023 edition of the SmackDown LowDown. Jackie Redmond was back for the first time in, I think, in about a month. We've had Mackenzie Mitchell on the show, Byron Saxton, Scott Stanford, among others. Not only on this show, but Raw Talk as well. She is back now. She's done doing her other obligations. Back alongside Matt Camp. They open up the show recapping the Charlotte Flair-Lacey Evans match from SmackDown, won in a matter of minutes, as she should have, by Charlotte Flair. We hear from Charlotte backstage here on the show with Megan Moran, and she says that her dad probably enjoyed that match with a bit of a wink and a nod to the camera, referencing the feud that she had with Lacey 2.5 years ago, where Rick was infatuated with Lacey, and they were almost going to imply that Rick was going to have a kid with Lacey. I think that's where that storyline was going. I don't think they said that on the show. Lacey did get legitimately pregnant in real life, and she had to leave the show. But had she not gotten actually pregnant, that might have been the direction the storyline was going in. It was fucking awful. But the fact that she mentioned it here, kind of like with a subtle reference to it, I thought was funny. She says that Asuka kind of wanted to send her a message by attacking her from behind. She'll deal with Asuka next week face-to-face when they face off for the WWE Women's Championship. And then this is a different Asuka. She knows that because they have a lot of history dating back many years. But she also says this is a different Charlotte Flair. And I don't know if I believe her when she says that. This has been the same Charlotte Flair for years. Asuka doing the same, the same singing and dancing shtick is terrible. And the Green Mist stuff, I think that's fucking awful. Asuka has changed a little bit as a character. Charlotte has not. This is still very much the same Charlotte we've gotten for years now. Face, heel, doesn't matter. Anyway, in the studio, they hype up the WWE Women's Championship match for next week between Asuka and Charlotte Flair. Matt Camp mentions in hyping it up that they've only ever had one PLE match. It's a pay-per-view match, but they call it PLEs. They've only ever have had one pay-per-view match, that being WrestleMania 34 when Charlotte beat her to retain the SmackDown Women's Championship and break her undefeated streak of like 2.5 years. They've had a lot of matches since then on SmackDown and on Raw, but never again in a one-on-one situation on pay-per-view. So they've had a lot of matches, and he also mentioned this is their first match in over 2 years. So I would assume they did have a match on Raw 3 years ago, almost exactly, when Charlotte lost to Asuka in a Raw Women's Championship match. I remember that. I guess they didn't have a match last year. I mean, he said it himself. They haven't had a match in 2 years. So Charlotte took time off after that. She came back in December of 2020. They actually teamed, her and Asuka did, to win the WWE Women's Tag Team titles. They lost it back to Shayna and Nia a month later. I don't know when that match would have taken place. I guess before Mania? I assume that what he's talking about is after Mania. That they did feud in a triple threat situation coming out of Mania 2 years ago in 2021 when Rhea Ripley was the Raw Women's Champion. They did a triple threat at Backlash. They probably had a singles match around then. That's probably what he's talking about. But still, it feels like yesterday. It feels like it has not been long enough since we have last seen Charlotte and Asuka one-on-one. Matt Camp said that he noticed a bit of a meaner Bianca on SmackDown backstage this week and to kind of keep an eye on her, despite her being barred from ringside for that match next week on SmackDown. They replay LA Knight versus Rey Mysterio, and Knight beating Mysterio. Big win for him. They hype up the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, and Matt Camp calls it probably the hungriest field of competitors ever in a Money in the Bank ladder match, given that none of these men have ever been a world champion before, let alone have won a Money in the Bank briefcase. They replay the Grayson Waller effect segment with Grayson Waller interviewing Pretty Deadly, leading into Pretty Deadly versus the Profits, which they also recap, won by Pretty Deadly. We hear from Grayson Waller here on SmackDown LowDown backstage with Megan Moran, and he talks about Grayson Waller effect having all the big guests lately, and he's going to have Logan Paul on the show next week. He says not a lot of people backstage like Logan Paul, but they share a brotherhood. He feels like they have a lot in common. And that was pretty much it. So, and Megan Moran calls him humble, and he says that he appreciates that. Obviously, she was being sarcastic. They hype up in the studio Grayson Waller effect for next week with Logan Paul, as well as the tag team title match next week. Pretty Deadly challenging Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn for the WWE. All the names of the championships have me all fucked up now. The undisputed WWE tag team titles. Speaking of tag titles, they replay Ronda and Shayna beating Alba Fire and Isla Dawn on SmackDown this week to become the unified WWE Women's Tag Team titles, taking their NXT Women's Tag Team titles. See what I mean? Like the undisputed, unified, new names for the Women's Championships. It's confusing. They also show Liv Morgan's return afterward, reuniting alongside Raquel Rodriguez. And we found out from Megan Moran right here when Ronda and Shayna are interviewed that Ronda and Shayna will defend those newly won unified tag team champions against the former champions that never lost the belts, that were never beaten for the belts, Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez, next week at Money in the Bank. I literally just said in my SmackDown review earlier today, I hope they hold off on the match and give it some time to build up. I know the match sells itself as far as what the story is, but I'm thinking they don't have a lot of teams, so I would drag this out a little bit longer, and you got to finesse it a little bit. They're not doing that. They're going right into it next Saturday. So in a week from now, they're having the match. And I assume Ronda and Shayna will win, and that's it. So I think Liv and Raquel taking the belts is a bit premature. Ronda and Shayna just became champions. I think they work well as partners. No reason to cut that reign short. I just don't know why they're doing this now, unless Raquel just snaps on Liv, and they want to turn Raquel heel soon, and they just do that. So honestly, Raquel should not have even been on this show. And Liv Morgan as well. I'm glad she returned. I'm glad they came back, or as a team and whatever. They're Raw superstars. So realistically, this probably should have happened on Raw, but whatever the fuck. They want to hype it up as soon as possible, so whatever. The brand split be damned. We hear from Shayna and Ronda backstage real quickly when Megan breaks the news that it's going to be a tag team title rematch at Money in the Bank. Liv and Raquel getting their rematch against Ronda and Shayna. Baszler says it's just another chance for them to tear the limbs off of someone. And Ronda says that they are the most active champions in the company, which I don't know if that's exactly true, considering Rollins has also been the World Heavyweight Champion for as long as practically they've been the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. And already he's had an open challenge on Raw. He was going to defend the championship in an open challenge this week on Raw, and he beat Braun Breaker on NXT. So even he's going to all the brands, and he's more active than they are. So I'm not sure if I would make that claim quite yet, but I understand what she means. So in the studio, they hype up the tag title match for Money in the Bank, Raquel and Liv versus Shayna and Ronda. They replay the Usos promo from the beginning of SmackDown. They recap Sheamus versus Solo Sikoa in the night's main event, won by Sikoa via referee stoppage after he hit the hip attack to Sheamus in the corner, and they show the exact same shot they showed on SmackDown. He did not fucking touch him at all, so I'm not sure why they didn't just do it from a different angle, but whatever. They also hype up the tag team match for Money in the Bank, the Usos taking on Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. Next week's SmackDown is a stacked show. They run down the card here for the show. The Grayson Waller Effect featuring Logan Paul, the return of Roman Reigns, Pretty Deadly challenging Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn for the undisputed WWE Tag Team titles, and Charlotte Flair challenges Asuka for the WWE Women's Championship. Looking forward to that show in London next Friday. No SmackDown LowDown review next weekend, I'm pretty sure. Typically the weekends of shows where they have pay-per-views on, 3 p.m. or whatever, on a Saturday, they don't do the show. If the show's on a Sunday, then maybe. They haven't had a Sunday pay-per-view in a while. But typically, if there's a pay-per-view like an international show, like London or Saudi or whatever, they will not do the SmackDown LowDown. They'll just, go right into the pay-per-view. So just a heads up for next week, just a bit of a programming note. We'll very likely not have a SmackDown audio review next week or a SmackDown LowDown review. Maybe a SmackDown review if I can squeeze it in before the pay-per-view. Very likely not, though. Definitely 99% sure they're not doing SmackDown LowDown next weekend, so we'll get back to it the following week. Have an awesome one, folks. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.